Right, so good day class. So last week I think we talked about the different building types and the professional fees that are due to you based on the complexity of the building that you are doing. For instance, when you are doing or designing nuclear power plants, of course your fees are much higher compared to designing a simple shed. So it's really proportional to your expertise also. But mostly, clients usually engage in firms when you are already doing or handling mega projects. So in this lecture, um, since I think we are already in our prelims, so let's talk about the owner's responsibilities. So this is just a short lecture class. So what are the owner's responsibilities? So we talked about the responsibilities of the architect. I think most of you are familiar with it in your professional practice 1 and 2. Now we're going to look at what are the responsibilities of the owner. So the first is the owner should provide full information as to his requirements for the project. So when you are dealing with a client, it is important that the client discloses everything, all his needs and his wants for a certain project that you're going to undertake with him. As the project becomes more complex, there may be times that, as the architect, um, the owner may want you to also propose the spaces that he omitted in the process. So the next is, when necessary, designate a representative authorized to act on his behalf. So this case, guys, it happens if for example, if you're building a house here in the Philippines and your client is in the United States, usually the client should appoint someone to act as his representative here in the Philippines. I think you need a special SPA or special power of attorney for that, so that you'll have somebody to sign over the documents here in the Philippines. So that's one of the cases wherein the client should authorize a representative on his behalf. So but if the project becomes big and it becomes more complex, like for example, I was working in Saudi Arabia, so it was a $1 billion project. So the client has hired a firm to act as his representative to view the drawings by the designer and to also review the output of the contractor. Okay? Then, promptly examine and render decisions pertaining to documents submitted by the architect to avoid unreasonable delay in the progress of the architect's work. The owner should issue orders to the general contractor only through the architect. So it is important, guys, that you make the owner understand that decisions, especially in construction, should be prompt so that um, you'll manage that time frame. And then it's important there should always be proper communication channels just to avoid confusion at the site. So the owner must engage with the contractor or communicate with them only through the architect. Okay. Then 6.4, furnish or direct the architect to obtain at his expense a certified survey of the site. So it's important also that you should ascertain the boundaries of the site before you're going to build the building, because it becomes more complicated if the building is already built and then it's built on the wrong lot or location. Then, giving, as may be required, topographical and or relocation surveys covering grades and lines of street alleys, easements, encroachments, and related information, boundaries with dimensions and complete data pertaining to existing buildings, structures, trees, plants, water bodies, wells, excavations, pits, etc., and other improvements, and full information as to the available utility service lines, both public and private, zoning compliances, clearances, deeds of restriction. So the deeds of restriction is quite important because there are some subdivisions here, for example, here in Cagayan de Oro, that limits the building height of a certain house or building. So it's important, guys, as the architect, that you know these things also. And that it's also important that the owner inform you of such things. Then also encumbrances and annotations to the title, association guidelines and standards, because some subdivisions here they have a certain um, standards as to what's the minimum cost of the house that should be built in your neighborhood, or what the design character should be. A soil investigation test, because it's important class that you know the soil type, and test pits necessary for determining soil and subsoil conditions. Especially guys, if the soil is quite soft, you may need these details so that you could collaborate more with your structural engineer and work hand in hand with the other allied professions. Then promptly pay for architectural and all other engineering and allied services required by the project. So it's the responsibility of the owner to pay your fees and also the fees of the allied services that are required for the project. Okay, so you make the client understand plus that doing a construction project is a very costly endeavor because you need to hire the right professionals so that you own what you call this, it's what you call um it's something what you call preventive measures to avoid problems, because if you don't involve professionals in your project, then it may cause problems in the near future. Then these problems class they don't usually show up within the first 1 to 2 years, so these are long term. So it's only through us, the building professionals and our allied professions, that the client may have a building that is secured and up to code. Remember, guys, I think in our professional practice one that nobody is exempted from obtaining a building permit. And the building permit requires that the right professionals should be involved in a project. Okay. Okay, I have here 6.6 pay for the design and consulting services such as acoustic, communication, electronic, and other specialty systems which may be required for the project. So if the project is is becoming more and more complicated, so they require a lot of design and consulting services. Okay. For example, guys, you are building an airport. So it's a complicated airport, but there are times when you will integrate new automation systems for your airport. So you need to consult with I, IT professionals and other professionals to look into your design. Of course, the main design and plan prepared by the architect. Okay? So it's the client's responsibility to pay for the fees. Then arrange and pay for such legal, auditing, insurance, counseling, and other services as may be required for the project. So it's also the client to make to it's also the client's responsibility to make sure that all the fees, for example, if you'll need a lawyer for the project, that they are paid. Okay, and if you need an auditing firm for the project, that it's the client's responsibility. So it's not something that you take out from your own pocket unless otherwise you agreed about it in the beginning. Then pay for reimbursable expenses incurred in the project as in section 7, other conditions on services, and all taxes including VAT. So it's the client's responsibility to pay for the VAT, but not including income tax that the government may impose on the project as a result of the services rendered by the architect on the project, whether the services were performed as a natural person, an individual practitioner, or as a juridical entity, a sole proprietorship, partnership, or corporation. So remember, guys, that when you provide the service to your client, you may act as a natural person, meaning you're acting as the individual architect for the project, or you represent your firm or your business So it's a juridical entity. Okay. Then if the owner observes or otherwise becomes aware of anything that may impair the successful implementation of a project, he shall give prompt written notice to the architect. So 6.9 is really crucial because if the owner is aware that a certain issue may affect the successful implementation of the project, he should um, inform the architect in advance because it affects the timeline. And if the timeline is affected, guys, then the construction is delayed. And if the construction is delayed, then the contractor may pay for LD or liquidated damages already. So if there are things that uh, the owner must what you call this, come clean with the architect and the team, he or she must inform uh, us beforehand. So, but then again, if you look at 6.1 to 6.9, okay, it only, I think, what's really important, guys, is you learn how to communicate. So there should be proper communication between you and your client. Okay. So it's important that you have regular meetings and then you try to um, establish a professional relationship with your client. Okay. So that he or she will be to call this will be more comfortable working with you, and then the client will tell you the problems pertaining to the project or everything. Okay, so it's really important not that proper there should be proper communication. Okay, so thank you guys for listening to our short lecture. If you have any further questions or clarifications, of course, you can always send an email or ask me in our group chat. Okay, our lecture here will be uploaded at our Padlet link. Also, our activity for the prelims. Okay, so stay safe, guys, and see you next meeting.